19 December 1944. Versailles. The cold of the night cut straight to the bone. A jeep slowly approached the main gate of Allied Forces Supreme Headquarters, 3 men inside. American military police uniforms, perfect insignia, hard and steady eyes. The vehicle stopped. The guard raised his hand. Password? The driver didn't blink. Patton. The guard froze. Because that name had worked at 6 checkpoints before this one. Every time the gates had opened, the soldiers had stepped aside. Patton. Just that one word was enough. The name of America's most feared general worked exactly like a key. But this time was different. This time, the guard had attended the morning briefing. He stopped. He looked. He thought. And he made the decision that changed the course of history. Today I'm going to tell you how Patton's name was turned into a weapon, how this assassination plot against Eisenhower was constructed, and how one soldier's instinct saved millions of lives. Before we get into how this all unfolded, if you want to learn more untold stories from the Second World War, hit the subscribe button and support us for free. But first we need to go back to December 1944. Because this story doesn't begin in front of that cold gate. It begins weeks earlier, inside a castle deep in Germany. Hitler was trapped. The Allies from the West, the Soviets from the East. 2 fronts. 2 nightmares. His air forces shattered, his fuel reserves running dry, morale in freefall. By the autumn of 1944, Germany wasn't losing the war. It had already lost. The only question was when and how it would end. But Hitler was asking different questions. What if the chain of command broke down? What if the brain of the Allied forces stopped functioning? What if the one man carrying the entire weight of the European campaign suddenly ceased to exist? Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied Forces. Every order of movement for millions of soldiers came from his desk. Eliminating Eisenhower could buy Germany time, maybe just a few weeks. But those few weeks could change everything. Hitler summoned Otto Skorzeny. For those who don't know the name, let me explain. This man was Hitler's fixer for impossible jobs. Nearly 2 meters tall, his face scarred from dueling, a Waffen-SS officer who had become a legend through sheer cold nerve. In 1943, while Mussolini was being held prisoner in a mountain fortress in Italy, Skorzeny had rescued him in a glider operation. Light aircraft landing on a steep mountain slope, right in front of Italian guards. Nobody said it was possible. Skorzeny did it anyway. Now Hitler gave him a bigger assignment. It was called Operation Greif. In German, it means Griffin. The plan was simple but terrifying. German soldiers who spoke perfect English, wore American uniforms, and carried American identities would slip behind Allied lines. They would change road signs, cut communication lines, relay false orders, spread panic, and the best few chosen from among them would reach Versailles. To kill Eisenhower, Skorzeny began assembling his men. The profile he needed was clear. Soldiers who had lived in America or been born there, who spoke English without an accent, who knew American culture from the inside. They would know the slang. They would know American baseball teams, popular films, street talk. Their uniforms would not be spotless but slightly worn, because real American soldiers had been in the field for weeks. Around 150 commandos were gathered, but only about a dozen of them were truly flawless. Skorzeny selected the best 3. He gave them a single target, Supreme Headquarters, Eisenhower. Then came the matter of the password. The American Army changed its password every day, but Skorzeny's intelligence network was strong. Intercepted radio traffic, interrogated prisoners, leaked documents. And he noticed something. Americans liked using the names of their own generals as passwords. Montgomery, Bradley, Clark. The most repeated name? Patton. When Skorzeny heard that, he smiled. It made sense. Patton was the symbol of the American Army, the embodiment of aggression, resolve, and fearless advance. The Germans feared him. The Americans worshipped him. Every American soldier who heard that name automatically shifted into a posture of trust. He gave his commandos their instructions. If you're stopped at a checkpoint, say Patton, Americans trust that name. That name will get you inside. On 16 December 1944, the guns opened up in the Ardennes. The offensive that would go down in history as the Battle of the Bulge shook the Allied front. American lines fell back. Communications went dark. Panic spread. And in that chaos, Skorzeny's commandos slipped through the American lines. In small groups, riding captured American jeeps, moving on forged documents. The same password at every checkpoint. Patton. And every time, the gate opened. 6 checkpoints, 6 times Patton, 6 times waved through. By 19 December, the 3 commandos were in the streets of Versailles, 200 meters from the target. Hand-drawn maps stuffed into their pockets showed Eisenhower's office, his sleeping quarters, the guard rotation schedules. There were explosives in the vehicle. Silenced Luger pistols. The plan was set. One obstacle remained. The main gate. The jeep slowed. The guard stepped forward. He had attended the morning briefing, had been warned that German commandos were wearing American uniforms. Intelligence units had been sounding the alarm for days. Nobody knew exactly where or when they would appear, but they knew one thing: they were coming. The guard looked at the vehicle. 3 men, clean uniforms, too clean. American MPs who had been in the field for weeks couldn't possibly look this clean. The battlefield dirtied men, wore them down, faded them. But these men's uniforms gleamed almost like new. Password? Patton. The guard paused. Normally that would have been enough. But something was holding him from the inside. Instinct, training, exhaustion, hard to say. Perhaps all 3 at once. Where are you coming from? 3rd Army Headquarters. General Patton sent urgent documents for General Eisenhower. It was a plausible story. Patton's headquarters really was 300 kilometers to the south. Courier runs to Eisenhower were routine. Everything lined up. But the driver's hands were gripping the steering wheel too tightly. The guard noticed it. That locked grip, the eyes sliding slightly to the side, the beads of moisture on his face. In December, in freezing cold, people didn't sweat. They couldn't. Not unless it was coming from fear. Everyone out of the vehicle, hands up. The commandos hesitated for just a moment. That single moment of hesitation gave everything away. 2 additional guards immediately raised their weapons. When the 3 men were brought out, the search began. American dog tags, American documents, everything looked genuine. Then they checked under the back seat. Explosives. In a hidden compartment, silenced Luger pistols, all 3 German-made, and in the driver's pocket, hand-drawn maps. Eisenhower's office marked in red, guard hours noted. Protection routes sketched in. Within an hour, intelligence officers were on the scene. The interrogation was conducted separately, each commando taken to a different room. It went on for hours, and piece by piece, the truth came out. They were SS commandos, the best Skorzeny had chosen. Their mission was to kill Eisenhower. Skorzeny himself had given the order to use Patton's name as the password. It had worked at 6 checkpoints, not the 7th. When Eisenhower was briefed, his face turned white. 200 meters. The distance of a cobblestone street in Versailles. If that guard hadn't attended the morning briefing. If he hadn't noticed how clean those uniforms were. If he hadn't paid attention to the tension in those hands. Eisenhower might not have been alive in his office that night. Security protocols were changed immediately. Single-word passwords were banned. Every person entering headquarters would be subjected to cross-examination. Not just identity documents, but cultural knowledge would be tested. Which baseball team won that game? Which actor appeared in that film? Things that would be near impossible for a non-American to know, but that every American would know instinctively. Patton assessed the situation differently. He called Eisenhower. "Ike, I heard. Are you all right?" Eisenhower's voice carried the strain. "I'm fine, George. They caught them. But it was close." Patton was silent for a moment. "Did they really use my name as a password?" "6 times. They got through 6 times." Patton laughed. It was a sharp, bitter laugh. "At least the Germans respect me. Maybe I should be flattered." Eisenhower didn't find it funny. "This isn't a joke, George. They almost killed you using your own name." Patton's tone shifted. "Then let me make them pay for it." Permission wasn't granted. but Patton didn't need it. Third Army interrogation teams took to the field for weeks. Every German prisoner was questioned. American uniform, American accent, American training. Every lead was followed. Skorzeny's commandos were captured one by one. Those hiding in farmhouses, those wandering around, posing as lost American soldiers, all of them. 15. January 1945. The three commandos who had tried to reach Versailles were tried under the laws of war. Conducting combat operations while wearing American uniforms was designated an unlawful act of war. They could not claim prisoner of war status. They were executed by firing squad. Skorzeny survived the war. He surrendered to the Americans and was tried for war crimes. His defense was singular. He had not ordered his commandos to fight in American uniforms, only to infiltrate. When combat started, they were supposed to remove the disguise. The tribunal found this sufficient, and he was acquitted. Years later, in an interview about Operation Greif, he said, "We didn't kill Eisenhower, but for 2 weeks we made Americans suspect each other. A soldier's greatest weapon is sometimes more powerful than a bomb shattering the trust the other side has in itself." Patton recorded this in his diary. "My name should give my soldiers courage, not be used to trap them. The enemy turned my reputation into bait. This will not happen again." After the war, the American Army overhauled its protocols from the ground up. Single-word passwords passed into history. Every identity verification was made multi-layered. A new clause was added to checkpoint training. A familiar name can be cause for suspicion, not cause for trust. And that guard? His name was never made public. There was no grand ceremony, no newspaper headline. A quiet commendation, a handshake from an intelligence officer, a note dropped into his file. But that man's pause, that 1 second of instinct, changed the fate of Europe. Think about it. Patton's name was so powerful that the enemy had turned it into a weapon. And right here, history leaves us with a strange lesson. A person's greatest strength can become a vulnerability in someone else's hands. Trust, respect, reputation. All of them are doors. And every door's key can be stolen. That guard closed the door. Not without asking, not without verifying, not without hesitation. Exactly the opposite. He stopped when everything appeared to be in order. He heard a familiar name and trusted his instincts. I want to leave you with this thought. If you had been standing at that gate, if you had heard the password Patton, everything in place, uniform correct, documents correct, story consistent, would you have let them through? Or would you have felt that something was wrong? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you're curious about the lost treasure Patton discovered deep inside Germany, that story is waiting for you right here. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Stay tuned.